Hello and welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're joining me at Natural Childbirth 101. This is Kaleem Joy. I'm a licensed midwife, certified pediatric massage therapist, and certified professional midwife. Tonight we get to explore a fun little topic, and that topic is pregnancy. The watermelon belly. So what in the world is a watermelon belly? And I hope you're all curious about this. Although many times, I'm sure, if you're pregnant or you have friends or family, sometimes people will say, I think you swallowed a watermelon, right? Or there's a watermelon growing in your belly. Well, we're going to explore a few other reasons why some birth givers may look like they're carrying a watermelon in their belly. I came back from Florida, which is where the last live was. Fortunately, the hurricane that was expected there happened after I left, and my family is doing well, which I'm very glad about. It ended up not being quite as severe in the Orlando area as they predicted, which is lovely for them, terrible for the Bahamas. So tonight, the watermelon belly. So what's a watermelon belly? Well, I call it that because when a birth giver has a baby inside that's growing, and that baby gets to be up into the later parts of the second trimester, so let's say 26 to 28 weeks, and then gets into, oh, hold on, let's turn this off. There we go, so you can hear me well. And you get into the third trimester, the baby starts getting big enough in the belly that it starts really wanting to hang out front. Women will complain of their backs starting to hurt more, and some of the comments that occur with a watermelon belly, that's my description of what is more commonly termed a pendulous uterus. Now, when this baby wants to hang out way in front, it starts pulling a lot on the ligaments and the muscles from the back, and it causes the baby to get into certain positions. So what is it? It's actually termed a pendulous uterus. Now, if you were to look in online or look in one of the medical books or whatever, the term for a pendulous uterus would be a little more dramatic than what I'm using. And it would be, let's see if you can see, let me back up a little bit. It would be more where the baby head was in front of the pubic bone. Okay, that's the severeness of a pendulous uterus. So I'm not talking about one that's that severe. What it means is a watermelon belly means that if you imagine that your pelvis, right? You have your pelvis, this is the pelvis, and pelvis looking at it from the side, and whoops, get you there. Oh, okay, go down. Sorry. All right, so what happens is I'm gonna turn this around with my hands, is as the baby gets big and it begins to get weighty, the baby, instead of staying upright and in your body, begins to start having trouble being able to stay there, and the baby starts laying out here. So you start looking like you're carrying a watermelon. And what also happens is the head tends to start sitting at the pelvis, but not down in the pelvis. And when it's not down in the pelvis, it isn't helping to ripen. Okay, so we're going to talk about, well, what's the big deal with this? Well, some of the big deal is, one, people are going to say, you look huge. You look so much bigger than you should be weeks-wise. And you start to think, yeah, I kind of do. I feel like I'm so much bigger. And really what it is that the baby is laying, forgive me, I've had a little problem with my lungs the past week or two. Instead of the baby laying up inside, the baby now starts to lay almost all the way out front. So you look big, right? meaning that your belly looks like it goes way out. And the other thing that will happen is that if you sit down in a chair where your legs are pretty even, your baby's going to lay on your legs, and you'll feel like my baby just is laying on my lap. And that's another thing that is telling you, something's going on. So some of the what it can cause is it can cause a issue with the baby getting engaged in the pelvis. Now, engaged means that the baby gets down in your pelvis nice and deep. Excuse me. And that nice and deepness causes the baby's head to start softening and ripening and thinning out the lower segment of the uterus. This is something that you want to go on for a few weeks ahead of time so that your labor goes shorter, it progresses well, and you don't have to do as much all concentrated in labor. So that's part of the ripening process, and without the baby down in there, that can become difficult. So some of the other things that it can cause is that the baby doesn't get engaged in there, so it doesn't get down on the cervix like it should, so there's not as much ripening, which means then what occurs? Babies can go overdue. The other thing can be that the body wants to labor, but it just can't seem to get the baby down in there where it needs to be and be able to really progress at getting that cervix ripe and ready and the baby wanting to come in. The other thing is it can cause inductions, right? It can cause the dates and the issues going on. Oh, you have a big baby. When we've talked about big babies, oh, you have a really big baby, you know, which the reality is the baby's laying out in front. So that causes this. Yes, good. So I haven't gotten there yet, just so you know what causes it. We're getting there. So you're right on target. So it can cause you to need an induction. It can cause overdue babies because things aren't ripening. It can cause some babies to not stay in a nice favorable head down position, and they can sit and kind of keep twirling around because they're not down in that pelvis that helps them to stay put. Now, what causes this? There's a variety of things that can cause it. One is that rarely, if ever, are you going to see it on a first baby because the uterus and the tummy have not been stretched out. So there's a lot more tone left there, right? Now, a second baby, not as common, but could. And then you get up into third, fourth, and on babies, there's definitely a possibility that the muscles of the abdomen, some women start to separate, which means there's less integrity of being able to hold the baby up inside. So, oh dear, my yapping is making my throat dry. So the muscles can separate, which means the integrity of them is not as good. The other thing is diet and genetics. Sometimes if the diet is not as strong in proteins, vitamin C, CoQ10 to help the collagen to want to keep that elasticity, baby from baby, that elasticity isn't there to help keep that muscle tone to be able to support the baby. So that's one. That's probably the less likely. The other is if you have had multiples, like maybe you had a set of twins before this baby, or triplets or quadruplets, and now you have a singleton. The body's been stretched out, and so it may not have as much integrity in that muscle to help hold a baby. The other thing that sometimes that can be is a big baby, a bigger baby for you. Say a baby that was 9, 10, or 10.5 pounds, there may not be as much muscle tone to be able to hold that. Now, imagine for a moment that you could put your hands straight out, right? And I asked you to hold your hands straight out like that for 2 hours and make sure that each hand had 8 pounds of weight. Now, one of the things you know is that your arms being straight out like this are going to get tired. And that's what happens in that muscle wall. It gets tired because it can't feasibly keep the baby up and in your body because there's not as much help from the abdominal muscles. Now, does that mean that you really need to work out your abdominal muscles? Well, I don't know, because I don't know you and your individual body makeup. Some people who really work out hard and make those muscles really tight, those muscles are not as good at stretching and they can separate. So there's a balance to it of not doing anything to doing a lot. You want just moderate tone between pregnancies to help tone up that muscle wall. It's going to be a good one. The other thing is being able to help that uterine muscle and the external muscles to have some help. When you do that and you use a belt, okay, and there are so many different kinds of pregnancy belts, postpartum belts, support belts out there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you some that are really helpful, or you may find others, but what their purpose is. Because often when you find a pregnancy belt, it's one that people think goes under the belly to hold the belly. But think about this for a minute. If you've got a baby sitting out like this, and you put a pregnancy belt up underneath here, all it's going to do is push the baby up, right? We don't want to push the baby up. What you want to do is be able to have a pregnancy belt that brings the baby back in, back into your body. And when you do that, it makes you look about 2 months less pregnant. And you very quickly realize, wow, that's what's been happening. I've had a baby that's been laying out on my lap, and now we're going to put the baby back up so that the baby's in a good anatomical position and be able to support the baby to stay there, which allows the baby to drop its head down in the pelvis and be able to be where it needs to be to help with ripening, as well as to decrease the pressure and strain on your back and your muscles. Now, some people say, oh, well, won't that make my muscles lazy? No. What you need is support for the baby and support for those muscles that are already telling you they're having a harder time holding this baby up and in your body. Now, here's some brand names, all right? There's one called a splint, and it's kind of a wider band that then goes into 2 narrow bands that can be put around in multiple different ways. Yeah, so Sydney says, I got mine a few weeks ago and my back has been feeling so much better. Exactly. And the reason why is that this whole uterus isn't hanging out, pulling all those back muscles and straining them. So now you've given it some support so the back muscles can do what they were intended to do, which is support your back as well as keep your center of gravity good. So the other thing of not addressing this is that it can cause your pelvis to have a harder time and want to get in a unfavorable position for the baby to drop in anyway. And so then we start creating a whole lot of problems. Now, by textbook, a pendulous uterus is there, and I explained to you how by clear technicality, it's the heads in front of the pubic bone. But for the sake of using it, this is what we're talking about, is a pendulous uterus, or I call it a watermelon belly, because the baby looks like a watermelon straight out, right? So our goal is pull the baby back up and in the body. Now, when you get a fit splint, or because of a wrapped cord, would the belly band cause any complications? That's a good question. So if your baby was not engaging because there might be a cord around the baby's neck and you bring the baby up, is that going to cause problems? No, because the baby is only going to be anatomically the same. It's just that it's going to be brought back up in your body where it's supposed to be, and your ligaments aren't going to be stressed. Okay, that's not a problem. So being able to have a fit splint or a Medela postpartum belt, and you usually have to get an extra large because it's made for postpartum, which means the baby's out, and you're using it in a prenatal time. That one works fine. And what I've found is I like the Fit Splint because it's a little more adjustable, it's a little more flexible. The postpartum belt it's larger and it's a little stiffer, and for taller women that may work really well. For shorter women that may not work as well because it may not be able to stay within your pelvis, waist, rib cage area. And then there are the traditional pregnancy belts that have a large wide piece that goes around, a third piece that goes on, this piece that goes over here, and there's so many different pieces. That one works fine, but realize that if you wear it like it's manufactured recommended, it's going to support your back, but it's not going to bring the baby up. It's going to just go right up underneath the baby. So what we do is we turn them around. We put the wide part that would normally be on your back where the baby is, and here's the tricky part of being able to do this, because you either have to be laying down so that the baby's up and in your body to then put it on, or you've got to have some help to be almost like a corset, where you've got to have some help where you lift the baby and someone else velcros you in. Now here's one of the tricks. Put on just a really thin cotton t-shirt, and then put that on, and then put your underwear or your pants or whatever, so that you do not have to take it on and off every time you go to the bathroom, or it'll never function. And once you put it on the first time, it's going to feel like, wow, that feels a little tight, I feel a little less breath. Why? Because your baby's now up in you where it's supposed to be. And give it a chance, okay? Because if you give it a chance through a day, what you'll find is as you get ready to undo it at night and that baby falls back more forward again, you're going to go, oh wow, okay, I need to take it off slowly and climb into bed. Now, rarely does somebody have to wear it all night. That's usually we have somebody who has a wide separation of what's called a diastasis recti. Their abdominal muscles have separated a lot, and there's a lot of uterus in baby, and we have to have something to help them because there just isn't muscles out there. But unless that's you, you don't have to wear it at night. But you will find very quickly that you don't like going during the day without it on. Like I said, there's other belts out there, but you want one that's got some width to it, not these small little bands that just go up underneath, because again, that's just going to raise the baby up. It's not going to bring the baby back in. Now, those of you who have had midwifery care or home births, most midwives are familiar with this. Sometimes if they're younger, they may not have dealt with it yet, and this will be a new experience for them. As far as the physicians, this is not something they look for. So this is why I want you to know, and you to tell your friends, that if there's something like that, that they look like they have a watermelon belly, they feel like their baby is so much bigger out front than their weeks, you know, they look 32 weeks when they're 28, and etc., that it may be that they need some help and some support with bringing that baby back up into their body. Now, the one nice thing about these belts are they're also really useful after the baby, because often that muscle, the uterus, your abdominal muscles feel pretty stretched at hanging out there until that tone comes back again. So it's helpful to wear it the first week or longer until you feel like your muscles are sort of regaining some tone again. All right. Let's see if we got all of our stuff here. Yes. All right. I want to hear some questions about this one. Okay? Questions, comments, start pulling them in, start sending them along to me. Thank you. I sure appreciate those little things. So some of the benefits are that you're going to have a better labor. You're going to deliver more on time. If you're, the other thing, that's one other thing, and I know that you're not reaching under. You know how when you go to a prenatal visit, they reach under to feel the baby's head. Well, one of the things I know is that when I go to feel a baby's head, if I have to reach way under the tummy and go like, where is it? It's way back there, and this belly is hanging out, I'm like, there's a pendulous uterus going on here. Let's bring that baby back up and in. Why? Because I want smooth, wonderful deliveries for everyone. And if there's something that we can find out in the prenatal time that can make a difference to how well they ripen, how well they labor, because labor is not good with a baby who's hanging out like that. The uterus is going to work hard enough to get it up and in, and it's got to make enough of a U-turn. So we want to prevent those if we can, if we can find it ahead of time. And you, whether you're watching this tonight or you watch it as a rerun, is to understand that you and your body know each other well. So begin getting accustomed to what that is. All right, question. Is there any viability to the, girl babies carry high in and boy babies carry straight out? I wish I could say there was. I have not seen in over 1,000 babies any rhyme or reason to this. All right, I think that each mother, each birth giver gets used to how she carries based on the children she's had. And if she's had all boys and she carries a baby and says, oh, this one, I'm carrying this one so differently. It might be a girl, or it might be that her body's carrying it out in front and it's still a boy. Opposite of girls going the other way, because it used to be, oh, if you looked like a basketball, you were carrying a boy. If you were carrying a baby in and high, it was a girl. No. Now, I can say that one thing I've noticed is that some, not all, are a little wider with girls. And that I don't really understand. So maybe that has a little bit of that wideness more to girl versus out forward a little bit more to the boys, right? But other than that, I just haven't seen it. And heart tones, no way. Whatever the heart tones are, girls can be low, boys can be high, they can go back and forth, and they say that to know a boy or a girl, you really have to listen to the heart tones in labor, which to some extent seems to play out, but I've had times when I think, oh, this one's for sure going to be a boy, and it wasn't, it was a girl. I don't say anything to anybody, but it's my assumption. All right, more questions. Fire them off. So, if it's out, whoop, and laying out on your lap, you need to bring the baby back in, because some babies are out here doing this number too, okay? And they need to be in and settled down in your pelvis, usually between 28 and 32 weeks. Prior to that, they kind of wallow around a little bit. All right, let's see. Do pelvic floor muscles also play into supporting the baby further in, or is it mostly abdominal muscles? Mostly abdominal muscles. Yeah, as far as the baby getting up and into the pelvis. Those pelvic floor muscles have more to do with how things occur during the last little bit of allowing some of that softening for the pelvis to really ripen. And if I was to say, if there's a real contracted pelvis because there's a lot of muscle tension, yes, there could be something that if the baby is trying to get down in, but it can't because it's too contracted, it's more going to stay high rather than out like this. Does that make sense? If the pelvis is contracted, the baby just won't want to engage down in because it can't get its head down in there, versus a baby who's laying with its head in the pelvis, right? And out in front instead of down and in. So the pelvic floor muscles, not so much. All right, more questions. Keep them firing. So sorry about the cough, you guys, but it happens. I don't know how many of you have had some of this fun little thing. All right. Hey, Emily. So being able to have the information that I've given you is something that you have an opportunity to share with others. And the way you share it is, of course, social media at the parks or anything else. Okay, here's our next question. Does being on your feet too long or sitting too long have anything to do with how babies engage? Okay, so being up on your feet, not so much, unless you have a pendulous baby who's pulling your pelvis so that your pelvis is rocking to the back. But sitting, depending on what you're sitting on, if you're sitting in a soft chair and it causes your pelvis to start tipping back like this, babies don't get into good positions and they don't engage as well. If you're sitting at a desk chair, this happens if you're in a car a lot. Now, I don't mean the soccer mom, I'm in the car doing things, because you're getting out and you're dealing with things. It's the hours commutes about things if you're doing that. If it rocks the pelvis back, the baby doesn't engage as well. And it's even worse if the baby's hanging out in front and that pelvis is this way. So we want to be able to bring it back. So let me go back to how you phrased your question. Sitting too long. Not sitting too long, but I think it's important. Remember, we've talked about that fluidity and that motion of the pelvis, how important that happens to be. So anytime that you're sitting too long or just standing too long, okay, I'll go with that, it causes a lot of tension. So you want to move your hips and you want to move and groove. There's a lot to be said for salsa dancing and those hips. And so if you're sitting, you need to get up. You need to get on the ball, move your hips around if you're sitting at a desk job or you're in the car. And if you're standing, you know, it's like move the hips. Get them to stretch, because those are really important for keeping that fluidity in the pelvis. But as far as the baby being pendulous, these are two sort of different topics. But certainly you can have the pendulous and a pelvis that's, you know, been sitting too much on top of that. And so you want to be able to get up, move around, keep everybody loosey and goosey. All right, now let's go. We've got a couple more questions. Our whole family had colds over. Yeah, I hear you. Mine's about gone, but it's been, yeah, it's been a little bit with the cough, but that's okay. All right, more questions. Fire them off. I love them. There's some people say, is there any geneticness to it? No, I don't see geneticness to a pendulous uterus. If you've had, you know, maybe a 10-pounder with the last pregnancy and this baby seems to be a smaller baby, that could cause something like that. And, you know, now the video series is not available yet. We are still working on it. You know, it's kind of like going through labor, I've decided. Only I'm still waiting for the baby to come out. But we're making progress. We're getting there. I'm hoping in the next couple of months we're going to have it finished. So here's a question to all of you while I've got your attention. We are considering putting it out on DVD first and then moving to an online series. I want to hear from each and every one of you. Do you think we should go DVD, then online, or just go straight to online? Start firing me those answers now that I've got your undivided attention. But I am having so much fun doing it, and really what we're doing right now, yep, that's what I figured. What we're doing right now, oh, you like DVD. Tell me why. Online, 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 yep. Okay. All digital here. That's why, you know, it was recommended to me that maybe go DVD first, and I thought, I don't think anybody, you know, how many of you even have DVD players anymore? But going online, good. I like that. I like that you guys are able to tell me that, because I really trust you to tell me those news stories straight online. Right on, Michelle. All right. Thank you. Okay. So when we've gotten the whole series, yeah, we don't have a player. I know. That's why most of you don't have players. We have the whole series taped. What I'm doing right now is that we are doing what's called BRoll. I did not know what that was till I started this. Some of you who are more familiar with movies or things like that. What it is instead of just listening to me talk, you have those pictures that kind of help describe the things that I'm talking about, making it more interesting. And today I went and I did more shooting for things like that to help be able to make it a fun and engaging series. But I'm totally excited about it, and I cannot wait for you guys to see it. So one of the things that will happen is I'm going to need some previewers, if you will. So I will be looking for people who want to preview and give me some insight about what they liked, what was most appealing to them, because it'll help us with, of course, understanding marketing. Because when I look at it, everything is emotionally connected to me, because I'm giving the series like I give to you all the time. And the photos are of, you know, families. And the challenge is that I have an emotional connection to that. So I need people, and I actually need, so start thinking about this, I need families or women who have not had home births and maybe would never plan to have a home birth. I need their insight and understanding to know how this is going to best be marketed to help them have this information and what they like most out of it. So think about those friends, because we'll probably have a viewing party at the house, which is always fun, right? And be able to get some of that insight to help it move forward. But thank you so much for asking. And I'm looking forward to it, trust me. But it's been good. Other questions? Okay, I know lots of women like that. They think I'm a little crazy for home birthing. That's who I want. Because the series really is for anybody, no matter where they're giving birth, be it home, hospital, or birth center, to understand birth and how they can work with it, and if they want a natural birth, how to go about achieving that, including all the nutrition, understanding about the fluidity of the pelvis, the breastfeeding afterwards. I've got both a normal and a complicated or concerns breastfeeding. We did the postpartum module. That's what I was finishing up today, which is I totally love. And the whole birth, you know. So it doesn't matter where they give birth or who they give birth with. Yes, they will learn about the fact that midwifery is an option and home is an option and birth centers are an option, so that they know that information. All right, let's see. What else? If I feel hiccups down low towards my pelvis, I can assume baby is head down, right? You can assume that, yes. Generally, if you feel hiccups where the baby is, you know, bumping down there, that is what that means. Here's another way, depending on how many weeks you are. We go where you're feeling your baby from the bottom up to the bottom, or up to the top, right? Where the baby's bottom should be. If you feel along there and you can come off the bottom where you can start to roll around a little bit and find the baby's leg bone as the baby stretches. If your baby stretches like they feel like they go sideways sometimes, it's a butt and feet. And a baby who's breech won't do that, right? So a baby who's head down will take their little legs and they'll stretch out like this. But a baby who's breech, you'll feel the feet do this, but they'll never stretch back sideways like this. So that's another way that can help you say, oh, then probably my baby is. 29 weeks, just then the baby is really usually head down by then. So you'll start to feel those things. Oh, cool, right on. So you have felt that. Yeah, so those are all good things. And babies at 29, 28 weeks that are head down, rarely do they move from that. They usually stay head down, and they're pretty happy about that at that point. Let's see. I asked, since that's happening right now. Cool. Yeah, right on. All right, more questions. Let's see. Mental blocks in labor. How do you get through those? Oh, that's a great question. So, mental blocks in labor, and you might have to give me a little more description of what you're maybe referring to as that mental block, because sometimes it can be, I just don't think I can go on any further, or nothing's happening, or maybe this is too much for me. And I think getting ready to go into labor, you have to be able to get that mindset that whatever sensations the body's going to give you, that you're willing to accept them. You're willing to work with them. And I think one of the most important things is not to allow your mind to think. So if the brain starts thinking and it starts giving you that little mind chatter, you say, I hear you that this is a big job, but I want you to sit over there, and I'm going to take a nice big deep breath, because that takes your nervous system out of stress and into calming every time you take a nice big breath in and let it out. And be able to say, I am safe, I am powerful, and I am doing this. And I cannot tell you the amount of births that I've had where there's been a time that you get to that ebb, that you're like, I just don't know if I can get over that edge. And they're looking at us, and I say, I need you to say what you want. Well, I want the baby. I know. How are you going to get to the baby? By having good, strong contractions. Great. And I will sometimes say to them, say it. I am powerful. I am strong. I can do this. I am doing this. And sometimes making those statements just gives you that bolus of courage to just take it a little bit further. You know, when you think about athletes go through this. They don't just simply run a marathon or do whatever it is that they're doing. I mean, we're watching the US Open today, and it's not like they just get out there and nothing goes on in their head and they just win. There's a mental game that's going on with them all the time of how to keep that mental program going forward. And I think that when you can go into labor knowing that you have a supportive team who's going to remind you when you get to those points where you're just not sure you can go any further, that you're safe, and help you to remember you can keep going. Because it's kind of that team that will be there to buoy you up. The other thing I find is being able to put affirmation cards, and I have seen some beautiful ones in homes. They have taken calligraphy, some of them have just been colored, and they've been so simplistic, but they put them up and they find something that says, if I get to that point where this is happening or this is happening and I just am not sure, I'm going to come back to that word, that phrase. And when you're in that last part of pregnancy and you repeat that phrase within you and you feel it in your body, there's a kind of a Pavlik response. For those of you that remember your high school physiology classes, right? Is that when you see or you hear something, the bell rings and the dog salivates because they know they're going to get a treat. Well, if you repeat something and you feel something, it's going to be in there ahead of time. And that's where that preparation is really important to be able to do for your mind ahead of time, is see the end results. Begin with the end in mind, knowing that when you get to that point, if you've ever done a really challenging hike, if you've ever had to climb something really intense, if you had a thesis you had to do, if you had a project that really took a lot, you know that there are those times that you just want to sit down and quit, right? And what is it for you? Not anybody else, but for you. What is it inside you that said, I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep going? And that's what you have to find. And be able to put an affirmation up or put something up, a picture, a color, anything. Tell somebody, if I get to that point, you say that to me and remind me that that's my mantra. Because birth will take you on a journey, and that journey will lead you to creating more of who you are. More strength, more courage, more fortitude, more ownership, and it is available for you to do. But you need a team around you that'll support you. And that's regardless of if you birth at home, hospital, birth center. Because those people that are kind of responsible for that back thing, like say a physician at a hospital, that's fine. Let them do their job, which is really just be there, help you catch the baby, tell you did a good job. But your team that's here in your pink bubble, your purple bubble, whatever color that bubble is, that's the team that needs to smile at you and say, you are going to finish. And I cannot tell you how many times I've said that to women. You will finish. You will have the baby. Just keep going. And that's what you want. That's what you need. Why in the last few days or weeks of pregnancy do people say that their belly baby has dropped? Oh, what causes this? Great question. Whoops. Okay, go away. Let's see. No. Oh, bananas. So your baby, there's a hormone called relaxin. And in the last 4 weeks of pregnancy, your body starts secreting relaxin. What does relaxin do? It does exactly that. It starts helping all of your soft tissues, your ligaments and your joints and your muscles, and especially here in the pelvis, want to get soft and flexible. Your pubic bone area want to get soft and stretchy, and all of the muscles in your pelvis and your perineum and your back. It also makes other muscles get loose, but it does that to allow your baby to drop in to your pelvis. So the baby may be here, and as the relaxin increases and the pelvis gets soft, the baby starts descending down. That is important because it allows the baby to engage and get down into that lower segment of the uterus and start taking oh, wait a minute, I have these. Okay, let's look at this for a second. Can you see this? See, the cervix, ooh, everything's backwards. The cervix right here is long. Now, if you see where that baby is, this right here is the bladder, right? Now, here's the next one. Look and see what changed. Can you see that? Let's see. There we go. See, the cervix got thinner because the baby dropped in. The bladder is now a thin pancake. So the baby drops in and your tummy starts going down, and it makes it so that you look more teardropped versus this one where the baby is up higher in your body, right? Okay, so you want the baby to drop in and get that lower segment of the uterus to start thinning out, because that's what helps you to have an easier, better birth. Lots of ripening, okay? So what causes this? Relaxin and yes, and your shape will go from being round to being more slanted and teardropped. And that's not a pendulous baby. That's just a good ripening peach getting ready for birth. And usually that'll happen to some people, it's 4 weeks ahead, but 2 weeks ahead, especially for second babies. Subsequent babies, sometimes it happens early, sometimes not till the week you get ready to have the baby. Some women, it doesn't even happen till labor starts. I haven't seen that as often. Usually that baby wants to drop down in there, and some of the symptoms are you can breathe easier, you don't have as much heartburn, but your bladder now has no room, and you are constantly peeing, but there's like this little, and it's like it was hardly worth it going into the bathroom. But the baby's doing the right things and starting to get things ready. So that's what it means by a baby dropping down into your pelvis, and that's why it happens. Okay, more questions? I feel like my hips have truly not become wider, and I am 29 weeks. Will they get wider eventually? Or is this something that doesn't happen for some people and it's not a problem? So at 29 weeks, your baby is not ready to be born yet. although it would be okay and the baby would be fine, it would spend at least 3 months in the hospital in the NICU. So your body is not ready to do that yet. You will find that your hips will start expanding and spreading as you get down the road here and you get down into that later part of the 3rd trimester. As you get to about 35, 36, 37 weeks, you'll start feeling that things are starting to soften. But make sure that you're doing lots of flexibility, because it doesn't matter that you get wider. It doesn't matter that the mirror tells you that, okay? Eventually, it's going to want to relax, and you want to keep it flexible to do that, right? Okay, next question. What causes extreme back pain where it's hard to walk? Oh, a number of things. It depends on whether you've had injury. It depends on how many weeks you are pregnant, if the baby's pulling on you. It depends on whether you have a toddler that you've been carrying on one hip and your pelvis is off. And that's why, you know, I've mentioned a number of times, getting massages and getting chiropractic is to help keep you in balance and aligned to hopefully reduce some of that discomfort. But extreme back pain, you have to look at why. And it's coming because something is feeling overstretched or something is getting pinched or torqued. And that's where you want to get that mobility. So get a birth ball, start moving your hips around on it, start doing figure 8s on your hands and knees, and start working towards getting that flexibility going. But if you have fallen, if you've had another baby, let's say, and during that time you had a long pushing stage and maybe you had an epidural, you're going to find that there may be some things showing up in this pregnancy that are telling you it's time to get those fixed. And pregnancy is a good time because things are shiftable. But I don't know your individual circumstances. And it's always possible that I know you, but I don't know your screen name. So, not sure. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions for the night? I like answering questions. You guys are good. All right, so we're going to be seeing you next week on Wednesday. If any of you have a topic that you would like me to talk about, please don't hesitate to send the messages along. I'm happy to do that. I kind of go along with what's coming up and what happens. Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. I enjoy doing them and hope that they benefit you and hope that they get shared abundantly so that others get a chance to hear more things that can help with their pregnancies and births too. So remember my closing. Thank you. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Remember our closing. Go in, hug your kids. Hug your belly if you've got one inside your tummy and that's the only one you have. Tell them you love them. Tell them they're amazing and that they can do anything that they set their mind to. So have a great week. Try and stay cool. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.